I wrote a few things down because I knew I'd be a bit overwhelmed by this moment. I wanted to start though, Andrew, I was reflecting on the moment we first talked about the possibility that I might run in Mount Albert, and I remember exactly what you said to me. You said, Jacinda, whatever you decide to do, I'm going to support you, and you've done that. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you very, very much. Thank you. You know, at the end of last year, I doubt any of us thought that we would be here. David's departure, I think, even took him by surprise, but he has taken on the mantle of a huge job, and I know a return to work that the international community will benefit from. But it did probably catch us all off guard, and it left a huge hole. And I know it left a hole because when I was out campaigning, people often remarked on what an excellent MP David had been, and I pay tribute to David Shearer. Countless people also told me about the outstanding work that had been done before that by Helen Clark. I went to places where she had been patron open buildings. She left a huge legacy here. This community has a memory, and it has very high standards, and I pledge to uphold those standards. Of course, the time frame of this by-election meant learning a lot about the parts of Mount Albert that were new to me. Some of them were not new to me, but some of them were. And I thought I'd share with you a few of the things that I learned very, very quickly, and a few campaign tips for those out there who might be entering into a September election for the first time. The first was that I probably border more electorates than most electorates, and I have excellent neighbours. New Lynn, Mount Roskill, Auckland Central, Kelston, and there's this other one called Epsom, who I'm hoping will get a new tenant really, really soon. I learned that it's really helpful to have a by-election in a neighbouring area just before your by-election, because then you can guilt the candidate into helping you a lot. So Michael Wood, thank you for all your help during this campaign. I also learned that having Dominion Road as a boundary line for your electorate is also very helpful when you've already announced light rail down Dominion Road. And I want it noted that I've got the best dumplings. I learned that cafe meetings can feel a little bit like a blind date because you're not quite sure if someone's there to enjoy their morning coffee or to meet you. So my tip for anyone who does them in the future, always tell people you're the one with the awkward rosette on in the cafe. And I learned never to have a street corner meeting, not on a corner. If you have a street corner meeting, Jeremy Greenbook held, if you have a street corner meeting midway down a street, people may come up to you and say, oh my goodness, what has number 32 done? Why are you protesting their house? But finally, I learned the most important thing of all, and that was that this is a community with real heart. One that was never short of things that they wanted to improve. But it wasn't just for them. It was for their kids. It was for their neighbours. It was for their whole community in New Zealand as a whole. It didn't matter what suburb people were in, where they lived, whether or not they had a home or felt comfortable. People were worried about the rest of their community. They were hopeful for the same thing. They were hopeful for decent houses, decent jobs, and strong communities. And one of the places I learned that the most was in our street corner meetings. We had 55 in total, and people came to every single one of them. And there's one in particular I know I'll remember for a long time. We arrived in our usual convoy, which included my little baby Starliner, and a group of volunteers all decked out with signs and t-shirts. And a gentleman came out of his home and he asked one of our volunteers what was this unusual gathering on his street corner, and then remembered the flyer that we had sent him. Now, I noticed that he disappeared, and I thought maybe he was wanting to avoid all the hoopla, but he came back out with a table. Then he went away again, and then he came back out with cups and water, and then eventually he came out with a tray of freshly baked muffins. And he shared them around his neighbours while we talked about ideas and hopes. He was a refugee, and he was proudly introducing me to his first New Zealand-born child, and told me about the strong relationship he felt to both Mount Albert MPs who had gone before. But he was also there to listen about what was happening in the future. And that is as it should be. Any seat with heart knows that we have work to do here too. Now, one of my last street corners reminded me of that too. We were in Owairaka. A young man drove specially to 2 of the meetings to talk to us. He was a recent graduate. He had a large student loan. He had shifted jobs, even though he was travelling a lot further just so he could try and lift his wages. But there was one thing holding him back, and it was his housing. In 4 years, his rent had gone from $300 to $410. He showed me an email telling him his rent had just gone up another 20%, and he didn't know what to do. Now, as I was leaving that street corner meeting, we started talking about the by-election, and he said to me, "Don't worry, you're going to be fine." And I said to him, "It's not me that I'm worried about." And that, for me, sums it up. I could sit here and we could pick over the results, we could talk about what it told us, we could talk about margins and the other candidates. But the people out there, what matters is what we can do with it, what change we can bring. Here in Mount Albert, there is so much to celebrate, but we need to go back to the basics. Affordable housing, the ability to get around our city, green spaces for kids to grow up in and run and play, water that you can swim in without getting sick 1 in 20 times, creating the best schools and the safest neighbourhoods. Now, I can advocate for all of these things, and I vow that I will advocate for all of these things, but real change comes when Labour is in government.
Yeah.
Now, tonight was always the first step, and now the real work begins, everyone. It was a step that was a little bit different, much different than any race I have run in though, but we never ever treated it that way. There were other candidates, and we always took the race seriously. One of the favourite mantras of the campaign was, "Take nothing for granted, make every vote count and earn it." I want to pay tribute though to one of the other candidates in this election campaign, and that was Jacinda. She's a passionate advocate with fierce intellect. Now, we set out at the beginning of this campaign to prove that we could model a healthy contest and that you can work together as future coalition partners while still standing on your own party platform strongly. I believe we did that. Now, the fact that we took nothing for granted also means that we needed a really strong team, and I couldn't have asked for a better team in this campaign. In fact, at this point, I want to share with you a few thoughts from David Shearer, who sent us an email today. So if you just be with me. Jacinda, my congratulations on winning the highly sought after seat of Mount Albert. Not to mention the best electorate in the country. Mount Albert has been lovingly looked after by the Labour Party and truly wonderful LEC and supporters over many years. The people of Mount Albert can be confident it will remain a Labour seat in your capable hands. My warmest wishes, I will be thinking of you, best David. I wanted to read that because the wonderful LEC David spoke of has been truly spectacular this campaign, as have the people who joined us specifically for this by-election too. Phil Harrington. Phil, from day one, you dropped everything for this campaign and you never stopped, and I thank you. Bill and Dave and all the hoarding team, they didn't have to put our signs up once. They put them up, and then there was a massive weather bomb, and then they put them all back up a second time. Thank you. Carol Symington, who did just about every job we needed done and with a level of organisation that blew my mind. Brittany, no one loves door knocking more than you. But you certainly made it something that everyone else enjoyed a lot too. Kirk, for keeping those phones charged and in constant use. You can have your social life back now. Jeremy, our street corner coordinator. Peter, our chief caravan wrangler, and me, wrangler. Shorty, who managed to recruit people during street corner meetings to come and then leaflet for us. And one of your recruits is here tonight. I pay tribute to your work. Brian, for making our data work and for being so good-humoured this entire campaign. Mandula, for making sure we kept a budget and kept well fed. Annalise and Tina for making sure I stayed a human online. Teresa, who kept the office ticking over and serving Mount Albert and its people this entire campaign. I'm really looking forward to working with you. And to my team, Barbara and Claire Louise, I couldn't do campaigns or life, to be honest, without you. Andrew, Nigel, and I want to add Michael Steele from head office. Your patience and support was unrelenting. Not once did you curse having a painful candidate on the end of the phone that I know of. And I thank you for your support. To my partner Clark, he decided that he would rather film sharks in the Coromandel than have to endure a by-election. So I haven't seen too much of him, but despite seeing the worst of me, he is still my #1 supporter. And when Clark's away, his family, Penny and Barney, feed me, so it's not all bad. So thanks, Penny and Barney. And I'm preserving my last high five, and there are so many more of you I need to thank, but we'll do that another time too. But I'm preserving my last high five for one Brendan Lane. Brendan was my campaign manager. He didn't even know me or my many foibles before he took on this campaign. He was focused, he was dedicated, he was inclusive, and he was good-humoured most of the time. Brendan didn't have to do this job, but he did, and he did it so well. Brendan, thank you. I've got a little presentation for you, if you wouldn't mind, Brendan. It's inscribed, Brendan Buzz Lane, Mission Controller, Jacinda Landing. I'm only reading this for the first time. Mount Albert, 25th of the second. I think the actual saying is to infinity and beyond. Together, alongside all of our wonderful volunteers, we door knocked 10,000 doors, we made 5,000 phone calls, we had 9 cafe meetups and 55 street corner meetings. We worked hard, and we will work even harder in September when we will turn all of this into party vote to change the government. So I want to share my very final campaign lesson, and it's that I feel incredibly lucky. I have found a home here, and I feel privileged and honoured to now be the MP for Mount Albert.